Hey, thank you so much. I want to welcome you to Other Things with, and our guest today is Other Things with Julia Lewald. Now, let me say right up front that she is the original Julia Roberts. Okay, her name is actually Julia Roberts. Take it away, Julia.
Yes, indeed. Boy, howdy. It's such a treat to be talking with you, Kenny, because we go back a number of years, and the older one gets, the more one appreciates someone who kind of knew you then, knew you in the way back. And yeah, I am the original Julia Roberts, but some young actors came along and started muscling in on my territory. So fortunate, found a spectacular man who still miraculously wanted to get married. So it's now Julia Lewald.
Julia Lewald. And I tell you, I'm so excited because I found out going forward that a friend of mine said, hey, Julia's in Hollywood and she's a writer. And I said, well, that's awesome, because we want to kind of start with a history, because I want to say, and this is a point for everyone to remember, that how we live when we're young, people remember when you get older. And so I have nothing but fond memories of Julia Roberts, because she is an amazing person. I knew her from high school band, and she was, I guess, a year ahead of me. What year did you graduate, Julia?
Class of 76.
Yeah, so she was just a year ahead of me, but always a very nice person. And what's cool is that her parents were always so gracious to open up her home to us in Morrisdale Estates, which at that time, that was the most premium zip code area in Euless. But Julia, tell me a little bit, because what I remember that your parents were both doctors. Is that correct?
Yes, indeed. And it was, I take, the daughter's pride in that both my parents were doctors. I'm going to hold this up again. We're going way back. This is before I was born, but this is a photograph of their medical school class. They University of Wisconsin, but did internship at Indiana. And the only female you see in there turns out to be my mom, and married that guy right there, my dad. They met there. I guess I bring that up just in the 50s, women were not, doors were not open for women in a lot of ways. And here we are, 2023, and I'm still going to say doors are not necessarily open for women the way they might be. But 70 years later, and the field of medicine, I think I heard somewhere there are now more female doctors than male doctors, and it's like, wow, and to think that it kind of started there with my parents way back when. But then they both ended up moving from Wisconsin down to Texas, and that's eventually how we ended up in Euless, and that's also eventually how I ended up going to Central Junior High and then Trinity High School. And my fondest memories, shout out to Mr. Nugent.
Tom Nugent.
Band. It is remarkable to me how much band, what kind of groundwork that laid for me. Kenny, how hot did it get out there on those practice fields?
I'm telling you. Now, let me ask you, your parents, what types of physicians were they?
Oh, okay, we got a family joke here. My mother, board certified psychiatrist, and my dad, board certified radiologist. And the joke was, she could see through him and he could see through her.
So at this point, let me insert that Julia, of course, our classes back then were real large in our high schools, normally around 800 graduating. And Julia was at the very top of the class. And I tell you, yeah, okay, go ahead. What number were you?
Oh, number 3. Came in number 3. My elbows weren't quite sharp enough, but yeah, Debbie Fuller and Carol Sieberling are 1 and 2 there. But I'm number 3.
Now, and if we have to, I'll edit this out. But do you feel comfortable with me telling the story, the Barry Manilow story?
Well, let me hear what the Barry Manilow story.
Well, the night that I came over to visit, and y'all were trying to find Barry. Can I tell that story?
Go ahead, because I think it's okay.
This story is an example of the type of girl that Julia is and was, woman, because she was very smart. And so I used to go over to their house a lot. Her parents were very kind. What's interesting is when we would have band parties, which they hosted a lot, the parents were just kind of course, all the people we hung out there were cool people. There wasn't a lot of shenanigans. But anyway, so I go over there one night and they answer the door and then they usher me upstairs to their office. And I say, hey, what's going on? And Jennifer's like, shh, And so Julia is on the phone and Jennifer, her sister, is typing on a typewriter. And they're like motioning to me to be quiet. And so it's like, okay, something's going on here. And then Julia, they made several phone calls and she says, yes, this is so-and-so. I'm with such and such sound company. We're calling to verify that Mr. Manilow is at this hotel. They finally got a taker and they said, great. Okay. We needed to know where to deliver the equipment. So they hung up the phone and Julia said, we've got to go. We went to the concert tonight, but we're going to go see Barry Manilow. So they actually ended up seeing him in the lobby like at 2:00 in the morning. And so, you know what I'm saying, folks, this is the type of creativity and genius as a high school student that they were able to work to be able to make something happen. But anyway.
I love that you were there for that moment. And we also just still a diehard Barry Manilow fan. But the good old Palantir was our school newspaper back then. I don't know if that was, I worked on it, it was just a thing to do, but my sister and I made ourselves fake press passes, cutting bits and pieces of the Star Telegram and the Palantir just to say, if we got caught in the hotel, oh no, we're here with press.
Well, as a matter of fact, when I reached out to her through Facebook, I private messaged her and she said, of course, as any of us would, like, is this the actual Kenny Price that I know? Like, how do I know that this is not, this is real? And so I shared with her that story, and then she came back and she's like, you couldn't believe it. But also one of the reasons why she's on the program today, first of all, we're going to delve a little bit into her life story on how a girl from Mooresdale Estates in Euless, Texas, ends up in Hollywood and ends up becoming a prolific movie writer and television writer, and mainly in children's animation, which I think is pretty cool. And so before I forget about it, she has a book and it came out in 2020. October 2020. And
boy, there you go. He's got it right there.
Yeah, and her and her husband Eric are the authors of this book, Eric and Julia Lewald. And I tell you, she was kind enough to send this to me as a gift, and it took me some time to read it. Of course, you can see it's a vast book. It's really the kind of book you would want to leave out like on your coffee table. My youngest son wants to look at it as soon as we're finished doing the show. But I tell you, it's more than just the title of it is X-Men: The Art and Making of the Animated Series. It is published, copyrighted 2020 by Marvel, published 2020 by Abrams of New York. Mm-hmm. But the thing that we're going to drill down to quite a bit today, of course, Eric was the mind of that show. But the thing about it is Julia had a major part in putting this book together and writing the book. But the big thing, folks, is the human interest story that is wound all throughout this book. And it has a lot to say today. We're in the middle, I guess the strike is still going on, the writer's strike.
We're happily to report the writer's strike has been wrapped up, thank goodness. Unfortunately, the SAG-AFTRA strike, the actor's strike is dragging on. And boy, things need to change. And I'm so proud of the Writers Guild for accomplishing what the Writers Guild accomplished. And I'm just got my fingers crossed SAG-AFTRA can be as productive for its members as well.
Yeah, so the writer's strike went on for quite a while, and we're going to talk about that. But anyway, the cool thing is that, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but when you read this book and what they talk about, the human story behind the making of animation, you see the importance of somebody like Eric, who really wrote Herd over the series for 5 years. And it's been the top animated series ever done for television. So we're going to talk about that. But before we do, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself because I want to hear Julia's story on how you got from Morrisdale Estates, Trinity High School. Where did you go to school? How did you get to LA? What was your first gig there? And we're going to talk about a lot of the stuff that you've been involved in writing. Before I forget about it, as I was looking up before we got on the air, there's an app called Muppet Wiki, and you're on there, and then it's got all your stuff listed. And so we're going to talk about all that. But anyway, tell me your story, Julia, of how you got from Euless, Texas to Hollywood, California.
Boy, it just for folks who are wondering, that sounds like fun. I want to do that too. Let me the big caveat up front is it takes some time. It took a while, and I didn't even dream of moving to Hollywood and making a life trying to do something within the entertainment industry. I just didn't think people did that. I thought, you were born out there and that's what you did in Los Angeles. And in Texas, I was perfectly content to sort of figure, well, I'll go to college and I assume I'll do a graduate school program. Both my parents had, and it's like, it could be medicine, could be law, could be journalism, but I assumed I'd have a post-grad program just because that's what my family had done. And and like you said, I was third in my class. So I figured, okay, all right, this can be done. I'm not to be smirched here, but I ended up attending Texas Tech University, which is in Lubbock, Texas. And this is 1976 when I end up going out to Lubbock. And it is I think it's the largest campus, maybe even in the world, just because it is on the edge of the Great American Desert. And it is a big animal husbandry university. Probably not the right fit for me, but I'm there. And they have a wonderful English department. So I'm still figuring, okay, medical school, law school, some kind of grad school, just trying to telling tales on myself. Senior year there was some prom dance event and went to that and came back the next morning to take the GREs, the graduate school tests that you're supposed to take to get you into those schools. Like, that was probably not my smartest move, partying the night before taking that kind of test. But I'm going to tell you, it came down. There's a specific moment when things changed, and had gone on an ill-advised ski trip with some gal pals to Rio Doce, New Mexico, my senior year, and shattered my leg first day skiing. So I'm in a cast up to my hip, and I'm going to be in that cast for at least half a year. I'm telling you that now. Didn't know it then, but I'm making my way around the world's largest campus, on crutches, going, trying to figure out, okay, now it's time to start maybe considering applying for the graduate school programs that I always kind of planned that I might try and get into. I don't mean to come off cocky. There's no assumption I was going to get into medical school or law school, but that was, or journalism or whatever, but that I would attempt to go for a master's or doctorate, just something. And this is that long ago. I am in a record store parking lot, and a friend I'd met, she had done music, and a gal named Cindy Hall, and she sees me in the parking lot, comes over, and we're talking, and she goes, you know what, because she was a little bit older, she just gotten, I think, her teaching credentials. I'm moving to Santa Paula, California, and I hear they pay people to write in Hollywood, and you like to write. Do you want to move out to California with me? And in that moment, it's like, wait, you can do that? You can do that? You can just make that kind of life pivot? So talked it over with my parents, who, bless you for remembering them. I love that you remember them. They were always supportive, always concerned, always supportive, whether or not they understood what I was trying to do. But my brilliant master plan to them was, hey, if I can get into a law school, a medical school, or a journalism school out in Los Angeles, would you guys help me do that financially? And then by the time I'm out of that class or that school, then I'll be able to, cover my own costs, and we'll spend those years trying to figure out how to become a paid writer in Los Angeles while I'm doing this other thing. And okay, well, what do you got? And I'm sorry, it was medical school. Could I get into film school, or law school, or journalism school? Figuring those would get me closer to whatever people who knew what they were doing in Los Angeles. So I applied. Didn't get into film school. Didn't get into journalism school, but I got into Southwestern University School of Law. It's like, okay, I'll go to law school. Moved out here still in a full leg hip cast. Didn't know a soul. And I just say that because, people do that. It's what I did. I came out here, started law school. This is way back in the interweb wasn't even an imaginary thing. We weren't even pretending that could happen. That was Star Trek science fiction. That was not a thing that was possible. So while doing law school, trying to sort of figure out what do you do? How do you break in? What do you do to break in? How do you get that chance? How do you get that opportunity? And writing you need to have spec script material. So if someone asks you, what that meant is you need to sit home alone and write your own either half-hour episode of a comedy or your own 1-hour episode of a drama, so that if the opportunity ever comes, you can say, yeah, I can write, here's my spec script. And you need just constant writing to have a stack of material. So meeting people, just trying to find out, how do you do this? How do you break in? So I move out here, start law school August 13th, 1980. And I want folks to keep that in mind, because the overnight success was 10 years in coming. 10 years. So I graduate law school, and I pass the bar, and I start practicing in copyright, patent, and trademark, figuring, okay, this is important information that, versus going into criminal law or, copyright, patent, and trademark, that's part of this whole entertainment thing. Maybe I can learn a few things while I'm doing this. And then kind of reaching the point where either I commit to law full time because it's the money's getting better, or I save enough money and then just try and crack the writing market. And I still don't know how, but I'm going to try. So that decision, I stopped practicing law and started getting a little more. I found a job as a PA, that's a production assistant, and as a runner, gopher, for a commercial production company that made commercials. It's like I'm meeting people, and I'm getting up at 3 a.m. to go set up the craft service table or whatever. This is all freelance stuff. And I'm entering. Back then, there were you would hear about or see on a post somewhere that there's a writing contest. So I'm sorry. I need to take a breath and let Kenny get in here, but.
No, don't. I'm loving it. And I tell you, it's just like Julia she's to top everything else. She was a certified, bona fide lawyer. So keep going.
So I had written my own pilot for a comedy script. So it wasn't a spec script for a show that was on the air. It was a pilot for my own original idea. And a fellow who was running Charles in Charge had a competition. Send in your spec pilots. Let's see how. Never heard a word. So it's okay, fine. Keep going. Keep doing the freelance work. Keep writing. Keep trying to figure out what I'm trying to do. This is going back a ways, but At one afternoon, my phone rings in my apartment, and I'm like, in my underpants. I'm not dressed for the occasion. That's what I'm saying. I'm sloppy. It's like, phone rings. Hello. And he goes, hi, is this Julie? Yes, it is. Well, this is Alan Thicke. It's like, wait, what? Who? How? It was Alan Thicke. Why? Why is Alan Thicke calling me on the phone? Okay, going again back into the 80s, Alan Thicke was at that time starring it just flew out of my head. He had a TV series, a half-hour sitcom.
Was it Growing Pains with
Growing Pains?
Kirk Cameron, wasn't it?
Yep, sure was.
Yeah.
So it turns out that the fellow who was doing Charles in Charge was also involved in Growing Pains. And he thought my script was funny enough. He passed it on to Alan Thicke to see if it was funny enough for Alan Thicke. Alan Thicke was looking for writers who could help him jazz up his comedy bits so that when he would go on The Tonight Show and the various talk shows, he would have clever little bon mots little anecdotes to share with the audience. So that was like, I got invited to write comedy bits for Alan Thicke for when he, what is happening to my life? Okay, all right, I'm in, this is my big break. Well, it got me it boosted me into the next level where I was meeting other people who were doing these kinds of things. And I got to go to The Tonight Show the night that Alan Thicke was a guest, and I got to listen to him, watch him, share a joke I'd written, and that feeling was like, can I just keep doing this over and over? Well, Alan Thicke doesn't need me every night to write comedy bits to go on Johnny Carson every night. So, still scrambling. Was told by some people, if you're going to be a writer, take an acting class or take an improv class, because you need to learn how it feels to talk on stage and say the words that maybe you'll be putting on paper and what you're asking the actors and the performers to do. So I didn't join Groundlings, but joined LA Connection. And that was also a game changer. Met fantastic people, learned, more about language and rhythm and setting up something. And again, introduction, meeting people. And I'll take a breath here and say, by the way, folks, this is 10 years in the making from the day I got out and started law school. I would encourage you, when you can, just be nice. I just put that out there. Be a decent human being. It can pay off. So I'm working as a production assistant at a commercial house, and one of the gal friends that I make there invites me to join the softball team. Well, I can't play softball, but it's experience. There's camaraderie, and I meet a woman there, a gal there, who is writing for the then brand new Disney Afternoon. She's writing Gummy Bears and Chippendales Rescue Rangers. Wow. I didn't know how you write for animation. I can do a live action spec comedy or a live out in a half hour or an hour drama, but I don't know how you write for animation. But God, wow. And she said, and they're gearing up, and you don't have to have an agent to go in and pitch. What? You don't have to have an agent to go in and pitch? That sounds like me not having an agent at that point, because that's a whole nother challenge, getting an agent in Los Angeles. So went in and met Tad Stones and Bryce Malik, who were the showrunner producers on Chippendales Rescue Rangers. And they were gracious enough to give me their Bible, which is the sort of the writer's guide to what the show is about, and a couple sample scripts. And I went in, I'm not kidding here, every Friday for about 6 months, pitching them, these ideas, trying to come up with a story that would fit for Chippendales Rescue Rangers. What if it's this? What if it's that? They were very gracious with their time. Finally, one day I was starting to figure out how this works. How do you come up with a story that matters for your characters? You can have stuff blowing up. You can have big things happening, but what is going on for your characters? How do you make that matter? And I came up with one idea, but they went, well, there might be something there. And they said, would you like to take this to outline? Yes, please. Took it to outline, brought in the outline, and boy, they had notes. Gave me the notes, and they said, well, would you be interested in taking this to a first draft? Yes, please. Went home on my IBM Selectric, which, again, this is way back. This is almost Fred Flintstone. Not even computer, just typewriter, trying not to make too many mistakes. Wrote the first draft, came back. Said, we have some notes. Would you be interested in going to second draft on this? Yes. So took all the notes, went back, wrote a second draft, came back. And they said, we have a vacancy here at one of our desks, and we're looking to hire writing staff. Would you be interested in joining the staff? Auga, auga. Yes, please. So I got hired to write for Disney for 3 years there. Everyone at that time was getting like a 3-year general contract to work on what was then the Disney Afternoon. So I got to write, I ended up writing 14 episodes of Chippendales Rescue Rangers. And then there was Goof Troop, and then there was Darkwing Duck, and then there was Winnie the Pooh. And I know I'm missing something here, but I got to write for those shows for Disney, and it was an amazing time. Then after and I'm forgetting to mention that someone else who was on staff at Disney at that time, someone named Eric Lewald. In fact, he had taken a leave of absence. His was a desk that was open because he was off producing a live action movie. So he comes back after his leave of absence, and then we meet, and my contract's wrapping up in the early 90s, as is his. And by the way, I was completely against trying to date someone in the office because it was going to blow my dream job. But we were grown adults. We were both writers. He was not my superior. I was not his superior. We were teammates. So we get married in 1990. We leave Disney, both of us, when our contracts wrap up. He enters the freelance universe ahead of me, and he he gets tapped to story edit the second season of a show called Beetlejuice, which was moving to the brand new Fox Kids network. In the meantime, we'd had our first child, and I was pregnant with our second baby, and I was freelancing on other shows. There was one called Dog City. There was a show called Crow. And just writing free. If I could get hired from somebody, hire it to write an animated script. And then Eric gets the call that Fox is developing a show, and they want him as story editor. And there's a big meeting coming up, and it's only for one season, but a story editor job is different than a writer's job, because a story editor job means you get to work on the 13 or the 26 or however many episodes are for that season. So you got a longer guaranteed paycheck versus being a freelancer on a show where you get paid for your script. So it's like, great, he'll take the job. We've got one little one, another on the way. And he's told it's going to be for a show called Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Okay, he'll do that. He can do that. Fine, no problem. And then, as he related in the book, the Sunday night before that Monday morning meeting, he gets a call saying, "No, you're not going to be doing that one. You're coming in for a different meeting tomorrow." Okay, you're coming in because we are going to develop a project with Marvel for an animated show for X-Men, the comic book. And Eric goes, "Okay, I'll see you tomorrow morning." And then again, hangs up the phone and says to me, "Okay, it's a show called X-Men. Is that Marvel or DC?" It's like, we're not comic book people. We don't know anything about this. He goes in for the meeting. There is Stan Lee. It's a room full of people in from New York, from Marvel. Then also folks from Fox Kids Network, and folks on the production art side, including Will Mineo, who's the genius guy who designs every art producer, designer extraordinaire, and Larry Houston, producer director, also a phenomenal artist. They knew Marvel chapter and verse. They could quote you anything because they were huge fanboys. Eric didn't know anything, so he was just, okay, good, yeah, okay, we can do that. Okay, fine. and then was given the task, okay, we need a Bible to get the show off the ground, and we need it in 2 weeks. Just by, to give you some background on that, good old Batman the Animated Series, which is a gold standard show, they had 6 months to develop their Bible. Eric was told you have 2 weeks, because we had friends who worked on Batman. It's like, oh my God, they had so much more time, and they had so much more money. So that was how we all found ourselves. Eric and I dropped into what became X-Men. And I say that it was so wonderful. And so Eric and his head writer guy, Mark Edens, his buddy from Tennessee, from University of Tennessee, Knoxville, who had moved out also to work in animation, or just to work in writing. It wasn't glamorous. There were no offices for anybody. They sat down at our dining room table, and I would be there too, because that's where we lived, and we would bounce ideas about what to do with these characters, how to craft the show. And so Eric and Mark came up with the Bible and the framework for what became X-Men the Animated Series. And I got to write episodes for it and pitch for it. And
now something you said that some may not pick up, but something I found really interesting is that at this meeting, and many of you may not know, but the Attack of the Killer Tomatoes was a very famous midnight movie along the absurd level of Rocky Horror Picture Show. And it's just what we did back in those days as teenagers. We'd go to the midnight movie and watch an absurd movie and have fun. And so she's talking about they were going to do an animated series based on the movie. But then they get the call thinking they're going in to talk about the Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. And instead it's to pitch in front of Stan Lee. And in case most people probably know that name, but he is the creator of the Marvel world. And so I think the humor in this is that, and as she points out in the book, this was pre-internet, pre-computer, no way to check anything out from the time they get the phone call till the next morning when they're meeting with all of these power brokers and the creator of the series. And then Eric has got to pitch to them why they should be given the opportunity to do the show. And he succeeds at that. And so a lot of tension, an amazing thing because, Stan Lee's kind of a hero or absolutely a hero in the comic world. But how exactly did it happen to snag it, especially in front of all these people? Do you know of anything that was said that was maybe a pivot point in the story to where, the Stan Lee feels comfortable with y'all? And I say Eric, but you're right there. And as you point out in the book, you were throughout the series in an advisory role, working throughout all 5 years. So is there anything that stands out in your mind of why, because you couldn't, bluff your way into saying, we live and breathe Marvel. So do you have any idea what it was to where it clicked with Fox, where it clicked with Stan Lee and his team? Anything in particular maybe that stands out just as a side note?
Funny point about Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Hardcore fans of the X-Men may remember that there had been a one-off episode made called Pride of the X-Men. And that had been Marvel's own effort at creating a pilot that they'd hoped would go out there and, we get it. We're going to buy that. That's going to be our new series. Yay, Pride of the X-Men. And Margaret Lesh and Larry Houston and Will Mineo had all been involved in that production because they all worked at Marvel Productions at that point out here in Los Angeles. And Margaret Lesh was out there pitching this, couldn't give it away. There was no interest from any of the networks, and the networks were at that time ABC, NBC, CBS. So it is Pride of the X-Men. It exists. It's out there. It ran, but it ran once or twice, and then went into repeats. But it never sold. So that's happening over here. Then Eric's doing the work he's doing, and I'm doing the work I'm doing, and then he gets tapped to do the second season of um, Beetlejuice, and is now working for the president of Fox Kids, who is now Margaret Lesh. Margaret Lesh from Marvel got hired to be the president of the brand new network Fox Kids. So Eric's doing something a little edgier with the second season of Beetlejuice, and sensibility-wise, his story editing there. Then Margaret Lesh says, internally, we're gonna do an X-Men series. I had the opportunity before with Marvel, and it didn't work. I'm now in charge of Fox Kids. I want to make this show. So among the folks in that tight inner circle there, a fellow named Sydney Iwaner was her second in command. So Margaret and Sydney were working with Eric on Beetlejuice. And about 8 years earlier, Eric and Sydney had worked together at, I'm losing the names right now, Hanna-Barbera. So again, be nice. But so Sydney and Eric had had a solid working relationship. And then moving forward. And then with this opportunity for X-Men, Margaret and Sydney felt that Eric had shown a certain kind of sensibility with Beetlejuice and the other stuff that would be the right fit for what they wanted to do with what became X-Men. And and they had used Attack of the Killer Tomatoes as a cover to get him in place and to get Will and Larry in place, because they didn't want anybody else out there knowing that they were going to try this until they were ready to announce it. So Will and Larry knew well before Eric did, that they were going to try to make this thing happen. But and you mentioned 5 years of X-Men the animated series. Margaret, she had a boss above her. And her boss had no confidence in an X-Men animated show, and had said to her, okay, tell you what, Margaret, I'll give you 13 episodes, but we're going to assume this is going to crash and burn. When this crashes and burns, you're out as president of Fox Kids. Are you prepared to do that? Will you put your job on the line to get these 13 episodes? And Margaret, she said, yes, I will do it. So none of us were signed up for more than 13 episodes, because the folks above her just assumed the show was going to implode. And good night, nurse. There were so many times it almost did. But Margaret held fast. Will and Larry, who had the chance to work on Pride of the X-Men and had really wanted that show to go, but at that time had people above them who were like jamming in the wrong ideas. For this show for Fox Kids, everyone was in the right place to say, no, if you need to remove me, I understand, but I will not stay working on the show if you try and make that change, or if you order me to do this thing. Because they had seen it happen on Pride of the X-Men, they weren't going to do it now. And the fact that so many people were willing to make that stand and do it, I look back on that now and go, the guts and the courage to put something artistic out like that, and to put your own career on the line for that, it's a testament to the talent and the taste of the people who helped make X-Men work.
Now, let me ask you, you saying that, something that stood out to me is that right after the show started, Eric received some communiques from, I guess, the person above, see, what's her name?
Margaret Lash. Mm-hmm.
Above Margaret, and basically trashing the episode, and then also calling for a total rewrite. In your world, is that common, or was that unusual? Or was it just their attitude that was poor against what you were trying to do?
The moment when the memo appeared, Marvel Comics itself was based out of New York, and Marvel Productions was happening here in Los Angeles, and Fox Kids was in LA. So again, go in the Wayback Machine, children. There was no internet. There was no interweb. You could barely fax. No one had anybody's phone numbers for anything after business hours or over the course of a weekend. So I believe that Eric received that memo late for us on a Friday afternoon, which meant all offices were closed over the course of the weekend. And I know it sounds crazy in this day and age when there's instant communication constantly, but that memo was demanding changes that everybody out here in Marvel production world, oh God, no. That would have been, no one, it could have, it would have blown the project up. But again, in a way, thanks to the fact that there was not instant communication, there also wasn't any immediate flame war saying, "What do you mean about the no?" Instead, Will Mineo took it upon himself to go through the person's memo line by line and explain why the show was doing this, or how if that suggestion had to take it, it would pull the thread and it would fall apart over here. And then he got it back to the guy by Monday, and a little cooling off period, and okay. So the crises that could have derailed this show were happening almost weekly. And one wrong person with power in the wrong job, and it could have derailed the entire project.
So it's kind of a good side note based on where we live now, that we pretty much like everything to be instant, but that's a good example to where the time that was forced upon them because they didn't have the ability to talk and to instantly communicate, someone kept their head, what's his name within your system?
Will Mineo.
Yeah, Will Mineo. And so instead of allowing it to be an offense, he went to work basically dismantling the objections. And so, and with that, the show continued. And so now in that regard, as far as in your experience, Julia, in your writing, in your career, is that kind of thing normal, or is that unusual is that something you expect to happen? I mean, that you have to deal with on a regular basis, or how do you see that?
Oh, if the question is, do you expect various hand grenades and banana peels to get thrown in front of you on a production? You just do. That's the nature of the beast. There are so many moving parts involved in making anything, whether it's live action comedy, live action drama, whether it's a feature film or a commercial, whether it's animation. There are so many moving parts and pieces. And there are so many people who feel that they have the biggest stake in the project. And there are people who control the money. Trying to keep all those people happy and trying to come up with a clear vision and path for whatever that project is. It takes a fair amount of diplomacy, and that's part of learning how to do what it is we do, and that's not a small part. And my husband Eric just came in, and we were talking. I've written or story editor over at least 40 series, I think.
I'd be honored if Eric wants to join us. That'd be great. I don't want to make him feel like he has to or nothing like that. But
no, hey,
this is all story.
Oh, right there, honey.
Hey, just in the office feeding the dog. Don't want to interrupt.
Great to meet you, Eric. I'm Kenny Price.
Oh, very nice to meet you.
Oh,
I tell you,
Eric, your Tennessee background.
Right, yeah. I grew up in Knoxville. My dad taught at UT.
Right, and I understand that you were honored here just a few years ago by the university for your lifetime achievements, and
there were a few of us that all met there way back when, and all came out here and kind of told stories together. So it was a wonderful get together for us now that we're in our later years, Tara.
Oh, and we
That's
hope
awesome.
come April. I'm mentioning this
Thank
now.
you so much for
Yeah.
Come April 2024, it looks like the two of us will be out in Knoxville for an X-Men event. So that'll be fun. Just if anyone happens to be around, you and I can communicate about that closer to
yeah,
when it
absolutely.
happens. Yeah. I was gonna,
Yeah,
here's alumni trophies up here somewhere.
you showing me all that. I have a question that I wonder because you remember, of course, UTA. I mean, down the road from where you and I grew up.
Oh my God.
I had to go over there for something. It was I think I was probably either later high school, early junior college, Tarrant County College, and I went into the student union building because I was waiting, to meet the appointment, and in that the student lounge, so to speak, there were all these 8-foot banquet tables set up, and they had boxes sitting on the tables, and they were original cells from Warner Brothers cartoons. Now think about this. The original hand-painted cells, just boxes and boxes and boxes, and they were asking, I think, like $10 a piece. Now they go for hundreds or thousands. And so in thinking about that and what a poor insight I had, I should have bought every box that they had because they were authentic.
Can you
But
tell
then
me
it made
why
me,
you were there? How did they get there to
I
UTA?
really don't, they weren't pirated. They were the actual colored cells of all the Warner Brother characters. Somebody had them in and they were selling them by the cell. And so, but I wondered, and I know that you're on the writing side in the production, but back in the day, what happened to all that stuff that you wrote for? Like, did Disney save all of that in archives somewhere, or do you have any cells of some of the shows you wrote for? How did that work?
I'm leaning back here to reference stuff. I will tell you, when we got tapped, when we got the call from Marvel Disney about the X-Men, the art and making of the animated series, got a call saying, "Hey, would you two be interested in doing?" Oh, I'll back up tape. So 2017, Eric wrote previously on X-Men, the making of an animated series. It is a dense oral history. He interviewed everybody he could about because that was our love letter, because X-Men had been sold off for parts after Marvel had its financial issues, and there was no studio support behind X-Men the animated series like there was Warner's with Batman or Paramount with Star Trek. And I realized we had all the old scripts in boxes above our garage. Didn't have the art, but we had the storyboards, but we didn't have the actual art because that was all hand painted overseas. So Eric wrote that book, Fair Use, and what that means is we tried to call. We actually did reach out to Marvel and other places saying, "Hey, we're interested in writing a book about the making of X-Men." No one wanted to participate because no one had all the rights in one place. So this book comes out. Thank you, Jacobs Brown Publishing. And then about a year later, Eric gets an email from Marvel Studios vice president in charge of global licensing. And it's like, oh, they're about to drop a hammer on us. Oh, no, this is not going to be good. Turns out the folks there had found Eric's book and they really liked it. And they said, now that we have all the rights together in one place, we are going to do a coffee table book. Would you two like to do the coffee table book? In other words, it's going to happen with or without you, but would you guys like to do it? We really like what you've done. You are X-Men people. We jumped on it. Then the realization hit, where's the art? We have, stuff. We have our stuff, but Larry Houston and a couple of the other artists, just by luck, had some storage units over the years where they would have art, they would have cells, and we were able to use those. Tragically, what happened, the storage of a cell is not casual. The paint can melt, they can stick together. It costs a lot of money to pay for the storage of cell art. Disney does that, with their stuff. I'm assuming Warner Brothers does. But by the time X-Men was over, again, Marvel was selling things off for parts. I think there was cell storage for about a year, and then not interested in paying for it anymore. And boxes were just removed. And I understand when the offices where the artists were for X-Men, when that job was over and they moved out and the next shows moved in, there were just boxes of X-Men cells sitting there that hadn't made it down to the dumpster yet, and some people managed to grab a few of those. There is a wonderful art gallery here in Southern California called Van Eaton Galleries, and they were the tremendous source for us on the cell front. They are a huge animation cell collector distributor gallery. They are amazing people to work with. But boy, Kenny, if I could get in that time machine and go back with you.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine what that would be worth per cell? What do you think right now for cells like that, especially with the enthusiast Comic-Con? What could one cell bring these days? Probably, for the main characters.
Oh, I can tell you, a partial cell for and by partial I mean, when you don't even have the background, when you don't have the complete cell, you just have like the painting of the character. Those partial cells can easily start at $300, and then the more you add to that, or if there's more than one character, or if there's background, if you have the actual original background painting, I mean, these things go for thousands.
Now, in the book, so with that being the fact that a lot of the cells were lost, and that type of thing, in the book, you have a lot of full, like these are double page. You can see that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But now, are those all cells, or how did you accumulate this to actually put it in the book?
Some of that is screen capture from the DVDs that were released. There were DVD sets that were released. Unfortunately, we still don't have a box set or a Blu-ray set for the series. So I'm putting that out into the ether. Hey, wouldn't it be neat to have a box set of Blu-ray or 4K or whatever? And also in the book, if I can, my favorite big thing, if I can find it here, is the spread with, here more towards the middle. This is fascinating. Here we go. This one right here, for fans of the Phoenix Saga from the series. This is a triple cell, hand painted.
Is that your husband's favorite episode, or?
I'm going to say speaking for him, there's one called One Man's Worth.
No, that's right. I'm sorry. But the Phoenix was like 2 hours long, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, but Dark Phoenix and Phoenix ended up being a 5-parter and a 4-parter. I mean, it basically ended up being 9 half-hour episodes that ran over the course of 2 seasons. And for a lot of fans, that's the story that got told. Oh, I can tell you. Okay, for folks who actually watched it then, who are now a little bit older, when the show took chances, and one of the chances was in telling the Phoenix Saga. Jean Grey dies, and she sacrifices herself by flying herself into the sun so she doesn't cause any harm, because bad things are going to happen. And she sacrifices herself, and it's a shattering moment for the remaining X-Men. So, given the vagaries of animation, sometimes an episode would come in from overseas, and you call retakes, and you say you need to fix this one. The guy's walking the wrong direction. The paint color's wrong. The episode called No Mutant is an Island was supposed to be the next episode in the Phoenix, because that was supposed to be the episode where Cyclops is profoundly grieving. He's just broken that Jean is now dead. That episode came back, and it was so badly done that Stephanie Graziano, the head of the Graves Entertainment, the production company handling the day-to-day stuff of this, she fought for 2 years to get the production company to fix that episode. Well, okay, that happened. Some episodes ran late, but if you were a kid watching the show back when it aired, you would see the tragedy of the death of Jean Grey, and then the next episode, the next week, was just whatever I forget which one aired, but it was just, oh, and Jean's back, no explanation, just Then 2 years later, No Mutant is an Island finally airs, and it's like they're all grieving the death of Jean Grey, and it's like, wait, did she die? Thank God there was no internet, because the message boards would have blown up with folks going, what is going on? But yeah, if you can find original cells out there, I would encourage folks to be scrupulous and make sure you're buying from someone who's a reputable person. But this stuff is going away. They're not making more of it. And with today's animation, it's all done in computer. There are no cells being made currently for today's animation.
I have a theory, Julia, that here's what's going to happen. There's going to be some wonder child in Hollywood who's going to go. I really think this is probably going to happen because let me just say what the theory is first and then why I think this. That there's going to be a wonder child show up in Hollywood and he's or she's going to say, I've got this idea. What we're going to do is we're going to tell a story. It's going to be a fantasy and it's going to be hand drawn on Mylar film. And we're going to put it together and we're going to take photographs of every single drawing and put it together in a series to where it actually forms live action. It's going to be amazing. They're going to say, you're a genius, So, but here's why I say that, because, in Tarrant County Junior College back then, it was called Tarrant County Junior College. I took 2 years of photography under Bob Lamb, the professor there. His wife had been my annual staff sponsor when I was in junior high. And so she used Bob's studio to allow us to learn how to do photography for ourselves and develop our own stuff. So anyway, but there's something different about light being pushed through an actual thing than the digital creation of it and pushed through a liquid crystal projection. And so, and it's a different look when you see something that's actually watching Rudolph that was, stop motion, actual photographs, even way back to not Looney Tunes, but Merry Melody. Because as a kid, I would wonder, wait, how are they doing this to where the background scene, it looks like they're running and it was on a cylinder. But so I think there's something to it in the same way that audiophiles, if you're a true audiophile, you're going to have a turntable. Jack White, he lives here in Nashville. I can take you to his house. Don't tell him I know where it is, but everybody knows where Jack's house is. But, he has a record pressing plant, 2 of them, I think 2, Third Man Records. And Jack is calling on all of the record companies to go back to making LPs. He's got a huge waiting list, and he's willing to give up some of the market share. So I think the creativity and the artistry of actually the thing that made it happen, it has an impact on actually what you're watching. And so do you sense that yourself? I mean, you're in that world. You've grown up in that world. What do you think about that?
Purely from an industry standpoint, I can get real cynical here and say it is always about the money. It is always about the money. And the fact that computers exist now, and you can get a program, and you can do things that we couldn't imagine doing just here, and not have over 100,000 cells hand painted per episode. I mean but it's so labor intensive. But but I agree with you. I think there's the way we take in content, the way we take in things, depending on how we see it or hear it for the first time, it makes a different kind of impact or impression on us. I really believe that. I agree with you. Now, if that young wonderkin can come up with a way to make hand-painted cells for a reasonable price, that would be a genius move.
There you go. You know, I came into Nashville for a meeting, and while I was here, I wanted to see Johnny Cash's house, and it had literally just burnt out there on Lake Hickory. I couldn't believe it. It was 3 slabs on the side of the lake there. Literally had just burnt, and Barry Gibbs had bought it, and a guy remodeling the house doing work for Gibbs. They left some equipment in the garage. It came on in the night and ran, caught fire, and burnt the place down. But then on top of that, that I went to the Ryman, you know, the mother church, the original building. And it just so happens that I got in right before they were having a huge gospel show. Vince Gill, the guy, just all these big names were performing. But they said, you know, you can just stay an hour because we got to get you out of here. They're getting ready to do the show. So the guy, his name's Richie. He was with the group Lone Star. But he sang gospel also. So I go upstairs to the balcony, and the sound guy's sitting there, and this guy, Richie, he's standing there talking to him about his gear. And he said, you know, and they had the big Yamaha console, you know, the digital console. It's like the PM1 or whatever. And, you know, that's kind of some of my background that I've done in churches. And he said, but the guy from the singer said, you know, my wife for Christmas bought me all analog gear from my man cave. And he said she bought me an 8-track tape player, a cassette player, a reel-to-reel. And he goes, it's amazing. So the guy from, he was with actually Gaylord Entertainment, who was running the show there at the Ryman. And he said, sir, he said, you know, rocker Alice Cooper, you know, the rock star. He said he performed here a while back. He said Alice only travels with analog gear back at that time. And he said that the difference in this room, he said this room came alive, the analog. And he said, so it makes a difference. So Richie said, well, look, I've got to go. He said, they're calling me. You know, so he leaves. Well, I'm standing right here. Here's the guy from Gaylord Entertainment. And I said, well, is it that much of a difference? Does it make that much of a difference, sir? And he said, he looked straight at me and he said, sir, he said, the human brain does not like digital. He said, the sine wave of audio sine wave, a true sine wave, agrees with the human mind. He said, your mind, though, it's just a little, you know, an audio track is just a snippet of what actually was, you know, like 1/3000th of the project or whatever. It's sampled out of there. He says, and though you don't hear it, he said, your mind senses the off and on pulse. He said, it's there. And I said, well, that's amazing. And then he looked at me and he said, but, and then he hit back then they had a floppy drive. He popped it out and he picked it up and he said, but this is tonight's show, the mix. He said, so we're going digital. But anyway, I appreciate that. And I think that the nature of it, though, and I guess really what it points to, and I wanted to be sure and bring this out because it's through the book, is the fact, and we talk about, you know, the writer's strike, it sounds like was finally settled. And one of the big questions in it is AI. And I think something that Eric pointed out more than once through his writing heard over the whole, he wasn't the producer, but he was the mind. He was the guardian of the scripts, the guardian of the story, and saying, we're going to keep these people human. And let me see if I can find his comment, because I think it's really telling, because at one point, I think it's in season 3 that, let me see if I can get small again. But in season 3, it's actually in the next page. I'll edit this out because I'm going to read this. That Eric, actually chapter 4, in chapter 4, this is about season 3, Eric reemphasizes the pathos, the commitment to emotional energy. And I'm quoting, it says, the characters care about their mission, their friends, and their place in the world. And he goes on to say, to succeed, we must take these characters seriously, make our comic book superhero mutants real adult people. And that I think that's what made the thing work. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but made the series work, is that there were human beings who were grown people writing things geared at the time towards children, but really to all ages. But the reason why the series worked is because of the pathos and the emotion and the human aspect of it that he wrote Herd over to make sure that that stayed a part of the story. And if I'm not wrong, what I remember in the book is also, of course, with any action, movie or video or animation series, there's a lot of movement. But one of the things up front that Eric and the team established is that it was going to be first about the stories of these people who, let me go back here and I'll edit this out too. But let me zoom in. Well, if I can get to it. Let me see. And like I said, I'll edit this out. Season 1, okay. Okay. Because Eric, right up front, the great quote is, the X-Men story was more about the lives of the characters, values of friendship, loyalty, and personal sacrifice. Whatever the cost, they do what they must do. And actually, if you want to say the thesis or the background, the premise of the story is extraordinary people feared and attacked for their innate differences, who struggle to act heroically, often at a personal expense. And so what's cool is that, and to me, Julia, something that really stood out in the book is the human element of the things that we all take for granted. We go to the movies, we pay our money, we enjoy the show. If it's something we really like, we tell others about it. And we really forget that behind the scenes, as you wonderfully bring out in the book, that there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people making this little time of escape possible, but also to them, they take what they're doing very seriously. And if they're successful, and I think this could be a truism, that if they're successful, it's because they do have the human element involved, and that they're fighting to keep things moving forward in the proper way, not allowing people to degrade. And something you pointed out earlier in the conversation is that Marvel had tried to get things off the ground, all these ideas and stuff that kept derailing it, good ideas, but not great. And then the right team was assembled in secret, really, that the Margaret understood, wait, these people can make this happen. And then it came to life, and it had legs, and and something that you point out in the book is that from the get-go, it became the #1 series. It took Fox television children from 4th place to 1st place. And so I think that is really an overarching theme that I get from reading the book. And so it's encouraging because it causes you to look at things differently, even something that we say, well, as simple as animation. Well, if it's done right, it's really not simple at all. And, so to me, that's,
bless you for that.
I'll let you take it from there.
Oh, no. And again, this is entertainment, but in terms of how it's about communicating, and that's fundamentally how we connect with each other in our lives on a personal level. How do you communicate with your family and friends? How do you meet people? How do you become friends with people? How do you work with people? It's communication, and I'm incredibly proud to be able to work in creating things that entertain people, but also I hope help people communicate and connect with each other too. We've been thinking about the X-Men a lot, in the last few years, and truly, you have the fabulous costumes and the magic powers that can blow stuff up, but the stories that Eric was committed to telling were stories that communicated about each character's own person and personal struggles. And in what matters more in a story, character or conflict? Well, your character is your conflict. Artificial conflict doesn't matter, but tell me about that character and make that character matter to me, and then I'll follow you anywhere. And it's easy to forget that, but X-Men really was remarkable in that we were aiming for Saturday morning kids. That was what that was then. But discovering in the ratings, we were getting college students. We were getting parents watching with their kids. We were getting adults watching this. It was hitting whatever the magic quadrants are, because X-Men Margaret Lesh, God bless her, was saying, you do not write down to kids. You write this like a 1 hour live action drama. You write up. And that was the silver bullet that just shot the rest of us out of the gate and said, okay, no one has ever said that to me in the universe that I write in. Oh, this is going to be good. And yeah, you've got, again, I keep saying you've got, sparkly powers and people who can fly, but it really comes down to the communication between the characters and what matters to them, and how they fight for that, how they sometimes lose, how they have to compromise. And again, it's a Saturday morning kids show, but I think X-Men really was groundbreaking in telling those kinds of stories at that time.
Well, you saying that, the things that work today, because, having grandchildren, we have 4 grandchildren now.
Oh.
The oldest one is Kate. She's 8, and she's Kate the Great. She's 8. But the things that I find myself drawn to, that I will actually want to sit down with the grandchildren and watch, are shows like Bluey. It's a huge thing right now. But when you watch Bluey as a parent, like when they're playing doctor with the dad, and the dad's it's his nap time. And so they're jumping on him and they're trying to give him shots, and he's actually asleep or trying to be asleep. So as an adult, we relate. Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, which is a spinoff of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I love that. The little bear, what's it called? Bear? With the little bear, of course, and also the Berenstain Bears. And of course, a huge one, Mouse. And, if you give a mouse a cookie, I think they're well written, and my grandkids want to watch them over and over. And, but then back probably some of the episodes that you actually wrote, because the New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh and some of the original stuff that's on Disney, we love. And especially as I age, it's like, wait, there's a lot going on here. And so I think you're hitting the nail on the head, that when it's well written and it's geared towards the not a little kid mind, it's written to the human mind, and it connects on all levels. I did want to ask you, my wife gave me a note, and I think it's a really good note. Did your parents live to see your success in Hollywood?
That is such a kind question, and I appreciate that. I got to tell you, and I'm so grateful that you knew them. 1983, the year I'm graduating law school, my mom died of cancer, and boy, that was my origin story in terms of just having the wind knocked out of me. Fortunately, my dad and the rest of my family did live long enough to be there for when these things started happening, and that was thrilling. I will admit, and I used to tease him. Sadly, Dad passed in 2004, but he was the first to admit he never quite got comfortable with the fact that what Eric and I do is freelance. We're going from this job here, we're going from that job there. He's like, can't you just stay in one place? Because that's, when he was growing up, that's how you had a secure career. That's not how it works out here, but we were again very grateful that he got to see and share that with us.
Well, do you feel comfortable going a little longer? Do you need to get off here in just a minute?
Is this not too long for you, or is?
No, not for me, but I always try to be sensitive. We ask for an hour, but Are we over a little over an hour right now, which is not a big deal for mine at 15, but I did have a few more questions.
Oh, okay, let's
I don't want to belabor the point, but I did want to ask you, just out of kind of the technical side, the book is amazing. And again, with my color deficiency, it's hard to describe, especially when you're colorblind. That then when you see things that are rich in color, it's almost like I'm eating chocolate. And my daughter-in-law said that there's something neurologically, it's almost like it produces things in my head, not synesthesia, but whatever, something like that.
Serotonin maybe, or serotonin.
I don't know. It's just,
Yeah,
it's like it's palatable to me. The colors are palatable. And so, but I was curious, a huge undertaking to me. My father was in printing, and he was a lithographer and a master lithographer. And I mean, if you were to see this, I mean, hundreds of hours of work. So I'm curious, I kind of get the impression, just the voice I'm reading, it seems to me it's you for the most part. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Don't want to offend Eric, but I think it's you. But what was the mechanics of actually taking this from the idea? You already said that the artwork that you had to assemble was scattered across the world, so to speak. You did have a lot of the scripts. You did have some of the storyboards, which are amazing. I find it fascinating that these cats could sit there and I guess it's literally a piece of cardboard, a board, and they draw. But how did you make this book happen? How did you assemble it? We don't need to go into too deep a detail, but being on an annual staff to knowing what it takes to, you got to determine the placement of, that's a simple thing, but the photograph and text and format. How on earth did you do that? Just in a kind of nutshell, if you can.
Quickly, huge shout out to Eric Klopfler at Abrams Books, because he was our editor at Abrams, and he himself, thank God, was a big X-Men animated series fan. So we worked directly with him. And so, hi, I tease, I call him Book Eric just to separate him from husband Eric. But so, hi, Book Eric. We're going to make a book. So how do we make a book? And Abrams, this particular branch of Abrams, he was kind and sent us the art of a few other books that they had done. One for BoJack Horseman and a couple other animated shows. So we got an idea of what it could look like. Then Eric and I sat down and said, okay, what would be a table of contents? How do we sequentially tell it? How do we tell the story? How do we sequentially tell the story? How do we explain it so it makes sense? And so come up with sort of a bullet points for things that we think are important to touch on in the telling of the making, the art and the making of the show. Then back and forthing on that, working with Van Eaton Galleries was so helpful at the beginning. They have a great deal. They have a lot of X-Men art, and they sent us digital files of what they had. So it's like, okay, we know we have some of this art, and then digging through Larry Houston's his storage sheds, and then another fella who himself had boxes of this, but it was all curling up, and it was just in someone's garage. It was not stored correctly. Then, okay, we kind of knew we wanted to at least mention each episode, which we do later in the book, like a few pictures of every episode in a little thumbnail. And then okay, let's say we do that. Then the telling of the story, how do we get up to it? And how do we explain what it was like making a 1990s animated series? How do we at least get enough information in there so the young kids today have some understanding of the hours of human labor, the hand drawing, that doesn't look like Cyclops, it needs to be drawn again, those kinds of distinctions. So sat down with, I like brainstorming on a yellow legal pad. So sitting there with a yellow legal pad, and then bouncing back and forth and coming up with ideas for what a table of contents could be, working with Book Eric, say, okay, if you do this, then can you do that? Can we do this? Can we do that? that may not be the most eloquent way of describing it, but it was my dear late mother had a phrase, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So we're looking at this elephant and he goes, well, we're going to need, okay, how do we eat this elephant? One bite at a time. So taking a
So,
step
but
back.
I get the impression was it hundreds of hours? It appears to me it would be.
Yeah, I'm going to say at least a year, gathering the materials, writing the bits in the book, then getting the book, all the hundreds of pieces, laid out in the book, working with Abrams' books, and proud labor of love, but it was.
Now, but that leads me into really, we can wrap up with this because I get the impression it's something that you do a lot now, are the Comic Cons. And I'm going to admit to you, I hear a lot about I didn't even know, I thought it was Comic Con. What's a comic? But it's Comic Cons. I don't know anything about them. I know they're hugely successful. And so you actually, I guess, go to Comic Cons and you talk about your book, you talk about the series. So kind of wrapping up, what's that world like? And you've done hundreds. Am I to understand that correctly?
I can't say we've done hundreds, but this is me getting my nose out of joint. So since X-Men came out in the early 90s, Eric would be invited to speak on a panel, or I would be invited to speak on a panel, and everything from, I've been invited to speak on women in animation panels, that kind of thing, invited as a guest to appear on a panel. That's a very nice thing. And in 2015, I was looking at the calendar, realizing we were coming up on an X-Men anniversary, and I don't have the math in my head to tell you which one, 20th, 25th, whatever it was coming up. I thought, hey, I started keeping track of various cons, and they are, you can probably find multiple Comic Cons on any weekend all over the place. So there was a con that was going to be happening in Los Angeles. This is not the big San Diego con. And I called and introduced myself and said, it looks like we're having an X-Men anniversary. Would you be interested in having us present a panel? Yeah, no, that's kind of, yeah, no. Thanks for calling, but yeah, we're not interested. I'm hanging up the phone. That's not going to happen again. But at that time, we didn't have either of the books. We are not the voice talent. We are not the artists. We don't have art to sell you. We don't have sketches to autograph. So that was, for me, a moment when I kind of started pushing Eric to create what became previously on X-Men, the oral history. That then gave us an entree to attend cons and say, hey, we've written this book got written, and we can talk in granular detail about the making of X-Men, the animated series. And then with the second book coming out, okay, and our good friend Larry Houston goes to cons constantly, which is wonderful. So that gave us a way to kind of be in the cons, like at a table, or running several panels. And that's, I kind of laugh that's our love residual. We have had the most remarkable, heartwarming moments with people who come up and share what X-Men or any of the other shows we worked on meant to them in ways that are astonishing, heartbreaking. There are, and yet sharing that it is so wonderful. It is so exceptional to be able to talk with people about this. And we've had folks who, I used to watch that show with my father, and he's gone now, but now I'm watching on Disney Plus with my own children. It's like, to be part of that for someone in their life is a thing I couldn't have imagined. And I'm humbled, I'm humbled, I'm humbled, and I'm grateful, and I'm thrilled. And it means the world to me that we get to talk with folks about that. Grateful every day.
I tell you, it's been so encouraging to talk to you, Julia, and I deeply appreciate you opening up your time to us and talking candidly about your life. And it's very inspiring to me. And I really feel like that as people watch this video, they're going to be encouraged on a lot of different levels. I would encourage you, and I always want to say this because some people say, well, you know, he's getting sponsorship or whatever. We don't take any money from anything we do like this. We're supported, our ministry is supported by the people that donate to our ministry. And that makes this possible through Transform the City. But I do want to recommend the book. And I tell you, it is a coffee table book, but it's more than just photographs. There's an interesting story that's wound all through it. I'm sorry. Oh, you can't see it. Can you see it now? Yeah. But really well done, really well produced. And I'm very impressed that you actually pulled this off. It's a major undertaking. But I do thank you so much for being on the program and sharing your story. And hopefully we'll talk again.
I would love that. That would be wonderful. This has been such a treat. I hope I haven't talked your ear off here. I can go on for a while.
I've enjoyed it. Well, my friends. Oh, wait, she's got something. Oh, there it is.
Another book, Julia Roberts, Trinity High School, 76, senior year for me, junior year for you.
Junior year. I tell you. And I maybe we can dedicate this show today. And I think Tom is still, I hope he doesn't take offense to this. I think he's still alive. But I think it maybe even be appropriate. Oh, wait, have you got, look at that.
Two of the albums here. I have two of the albums, 74 to 75 and 75 to 76.
And
Thomas Nugent.
And I tell you, today, well, let me just say that, think about this, folks, and this is a lesson that we can really drive home today, that here I am, 64. I graduated how many years ago? I was 18 when I graduated. So, wow. I mean, 40, whatever. I don't do math. But like 45 years ago, 46 years ago, do the math, Susan. But to this day, that man, Tom Nugent, so impacted my life, Julia's life, and everybody. How long? 46 years ago, since I graduated. And I tell you, Tom Nugent, if you were not, he called people that didn't practice slackers, and he kind of ran things like a drill sergeant. But you know what was interesting, and I'm not finishing just yet because I want Julia to comment on this. But for those of us who practiced our horns and were prepared, he was very kind, and only to the children that didn't really take things seriously. He would bear down on them hard to bring out the best in them. But to think about that someone who was a school teacher, band director, to have that kind of impact and influence, I think says a lot. And Julia has already testified that what she gained from him and being in that environment actually is foundational to the person that she is. And I absolutely can say that. And my sons are bearing the benefits from it. And I've reached out to both Tom Nugent and then my band director in junior high, Joe Gunn, who taught me music. So it's I guess really it's the kind of legacy that I want to leave. And I think that what Julia's saying. But Julia, you have the final word, and then I'll close us out with a salutation I always do.
If I'm going to have the final word here as assistant drum major under Ben Fast with Bobby Francis.
And he's director of bands at was, as far as I know, Tarrant, Texas Christian University.
Yes, huge. This is going to be call and response. Okay, Ken, let's see if I can pull it off and you can pull it off. Okay, drill, positions of attention, heels together, stomach in, shoulders back.
Yeah, okay.
Head up, chin in. You let me down there, Kenny.
Well, I tell you, I was probably, I mean, I was always in sync, but I was
no,
most
you
of the
were.
time.
Yeah, but that's the kind of thing. 40, nearly 50 years later, the kind of Mr. Nugent taught you how to require certain levels of commitment and discipline from yourself. Making it out here, whatever I've been able to accomplish, that's been fundamental to me, is having that kind of discipline and commitment, and whatever else we're talking about, the joy of having been with a group of other people who were just as, but for the slackers, we know who you were. But the joy of being out there sweating. Oh, okay. Quick story here. Kenny, do you remember this? Because I think there made it's a different universe, but 45 years ago, you had to go out for practice in the hottest days of Texas, late summer, early fall. There would, no discussion, but there would be a bottle of salt tablets on the chalkboard railing as you walk out, and you were supposed to know, because there was no Gatorade back then for us, but you needed to take your salt tablets because you're going to go out there and you're going to sweat and you're either going to faint or you're going to keep going. I just remember that. Like, wow, us kids were supposed to. Okay, I guess I need to take a salt tablet. But again, it was again self-discipline. What do you need to do to get through this? How are you going to get through this? Yeah.
Well, we're rolling, but I made all-state band my junior and senior year, and which was in Texas. It was a big deal. So our senior year, they scheduled us a flight on Southwest Airlines. Okay. So the first year, I think we went down by van. So the second year, my senior year, they flew us down there. Now think about this, Joey. This is what you're talking about. They flew us in 1977 with no sponsors. None of us were adults. And they flew us with no sponsors. We had to take it. Well, it was Ben Fast, and I was a senior, so Ben was graduated, but it was Chuck Garrettson. Jennifer, Chuck Garrettson, Jennifer. And so it's at San Antonio. The Texas Music Educators Association is always at TMA, is at San Antonio, still is. And so we take a cab, kids, and the cab driver knew we didn't know where we were going. So the cab ride there was like $40. The cab ride back was like $10. And I said, well, wait, why is it so much cheaper? And he said, well, the other guy just drove you around, because we didn't know we were that close to the airport. So we get to the hotel, we check in. We have no sponsors staying with us in the room, okay, because we were those type of kids. We were good kids.
Oh, no.
And so I'm sorry. So I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm saying you're right. You're good, responsible kids. Yeah. Yeah.
And so one night I'm on the Texas River Walk there in San Antonio, and I run into Tom Nugent, our band director, and he stops and he runs into me and he looks up at me because it's kind of dark on the Riverwalk. And he said, Kenny Price, are you behaving? I said, yes, sir, I am. Good. Keep it up. And that was the last I saw him. And wow, what memories. But again, and Julia, you said, and we'll close with this, but talking about that camaraderie, that community, and that speaks to the book. It speaks to the things that influenced us. And I tell you, folks, in these times that are hard, and at the beginning of the series, when you read in the book that the world that they're casting as far as what the X-Men lived in, and I won't go into it now, but it's like you're reading a prophetic word about the world we're living in. And so I thought, boy, that's telling. But in the midst of it, the encouraging thing that keeps us all motivated to live another day is that camaraderie that you used, that word, and community, and the love and the emotion. And as Julia shared at the Comic-Cons, is those relationships that people let them know that, hey, this is how your work has impacted us for good. And so let's let that be an encouragement in these hard times to be those type of people. And with that, I bid you peace.